Before money, before gold, before the great armies of Rome marched across the known world, there was something smaller, something white, something so ordinary that today you shake it casually over your dinner without a second thought. Salt, a mineral so common in the modern world that it costs almost nothing. A mineral so fundamental to ancient life that wars were fought over it, empires were built upon it, and the very word we use today for the money we earn each week traces its origins directly back to it. The story of salt in ancient Rome is not a footnote in history. It is a window into the entire architecture of how a civilization sustains itself, how it feeds its people, pays its armies, controls its territory, and projects its power across hundreds of thousands of square miles of hostile landscape. Without refrigeration, without modern food preservation technology, without the global supply chains we take entirely for granted, the ancient world faced a question of survival every single day. How do you keep food from rotting? How do you feed a soldier on a march that lasts months? How do you preserve enough meat and fish to carry an army through winter? The answer, every single time, was the same: salt. This is its story. To truly understand why salt was worth more than gold in the ancient world, you need to perform a simple mental exercise. Remove every piece of modern food preservation technology from your life. No refrigerator, no freezer, no vacuum-sealed packaging, no preservatives listed in small print on the back of a packet, no supermarket where food arrives daily from temperature-controlled supply chains stretching across the globe. Now, imagine the heat of a Roman summer in the Mediterranean, temperatures regularly exceeding 35 degrees, meat slaughtered in the morning that would begin to rot by afternoon, fish caught at dawn that would be inedible by nightfall, grain that could be destroyed by moisture and mold within weeks of harvest. In this world, the real world that every single human being on Earth lived in for most of recorded history, food preservation was not a convenience. It was the difference between life and death, between an army that could fight and an army that collapsed from dysentery and starvation, between a city that could survive winter and a city that could not. Salt solved this problem with elegant, almost miraculous efficiency. Applied to meat, it drew out moisture through osmosis, creating an environment where the bacteria that caused decay simply could not survive. A piece of salted meat that would rot in 2 days could last months. Fish packed in salt could be transported hundreds of miles. Grain stored in salt-treated containers resisted the moisture that would otherwise destroy it. Salt did not just preserve food. In the most literal possible sense, it preserved civilization. Rome did not wait for salt to come to it. Rome went to the salt, and then Rome built roads to make sure the salt kept coming. The most famous of these was the Via Salaria, the Salt Road, one of the oldest roads in all of Italy, predating the Roman Republic itself. Running from the salt works on the Adriatic coast near the mouth of the Tiber all the way into the heart of Rome, the Via Salaria was not merely a trade route. It was a lifeline, a vein through which the white blood of the empire's survival flowed continuously toward the city's hungry heart. The strategic importance of salt routes cannot be overstated. Control the salt road and you control the food supply. Control the food supply and you control the population. Control the population and you control power itself. The Romans understood this with the cold, pragmatic genius that defined their approach to empire building. The salt flats near Ostia, Rome's port city at the mouth of the Tiber, were among the most valuable pieces of real estate in the entire ancient world. Not for their beauty, not for their strategic position as a military site, but because they produced the mineral without which the entire edifice of Roman civilization would begin to crack. Roman engineers, never satisfied with what nature provided without improvement, worked to expand and optimize the salt production facilities near Ostia over centuries of continuous development. The production of salt was not left to chance or to private enterprise alone. It was a matter of state, a matter of survival, and eventually a matter of political power. Of all the ways that salt shaped Roman civilization, none is more fascinating or more misunderstood than its relationship with the Roman soldier. The popular story, repeated endlessly in books and documentaries and internet articles, is simple and satisfying. Roman soldiers were paid in salt. It is a clean story, a vivid story, and like many clean and vivid historical stories, it is not entirely accurate. The truth is more nuanced and in many ways more interesting. What Roman soldiers actually received was something called the salarium, from the Latin word sal, meaning salt. The salarium was an allowance, a designated portion of a soldier's overall pay, intended specifically to enable him to purchase salt and other essential supplies that he needed to sustain himself on campaign. Whether this allowance was ever paid directly in salt rather than in coin is debated by historians. What is not debated is the centrality of salt to the Roman military system and to the Roman economy as a whole. A Roman legionary on campaign was a walking logistical challenge. He might march 20 miles a day carrying equipment weighing 40 to 60 pounds. He needed to eat. He needed to preserve the food he ate. He needed salt for his own body, because physical exertion and heat causes the human body to lose salt through sweat, and a soldier depleted of salt becomes weak, confused, and unable to fight. Salt was not just currency in the Roman military system. It was fuel. It was medicine. It was the invisible ingredient without which the most powerful army the ancient world had ever seen would simply stop functioning. And from this ancient allowance, this salarium, comes a word that every working person on earth uses today: salary. Salt was too important to be left to the free market. Rome knew this, and Rome acted on it with the ruthless efficiency that characterized its approach to anything essential to the functioning of the state. The control of salt production and distribution in the Roman world was a political instrument of enormous power. Roman authorities regulated the price of salt, keeping it artificially low at certain points in history to maintain public order and prevent unrest among the urban poor who depended on it for basic food preservation. This was not charity, it was politics. A population that could not afford salt was a population that could not preserve food. A population that could not preserve food was a population that was hungry, desperate, and dangerous. The control of salt price was, in this sense, a tool of social control as sophisticated as any military deployment. Beyond price control, the taxation of salt provided a significant stream of revenue for the Roman state. Salt taxes, among the most ancient forms of taxation in human history, funded military campaigns, public works, and the vast administrative apparatus that kept the empire functioning. The political power of salt extended beyond Rome's borders too. When Rome wanted to punish a conquered people, one of the most devastating tools available was disrupting their salt supply. An enemy without salt was an enemy who could not feed its army, could not preserve its food through winter, and could not sustain resistance. Salt was, in the most practical and unromantic sense, a weapon of war. Beyond economics and military strategy, salt permeated every level of Roman daily life and culture in ways that went far deeper than mere practicality. Salt was present at Roman religious ceremonies, offered to the gods alongside grain in the sacred mixture called mola salsa, prepared by the Vestal Virgins, the most sacred priestesses in all of Rome. To offer salt to a god was to offer something genuinely precious, something that cost real resources and real effort to produce. The gods, Romans believed, deserved nothing less. Salt also played a crucial role in Roman social rituals. To share salt with someone was to share your table, your trust, and your life. The Latin phrase cum grano salis, with a grain of salt, which we still use today to mean approaching something with healthy skepticism, originated in Roman culture. Salt flavored not just food but language itself, giving Roman rhetoric its famous sharpness and wit. The Latin word for salt, sal, became synonymous with intelligence, humor, and sophistication. A man of wit was said to have salt. A sharp remark was salty. The mineral had worked its way so deeply into the Latin language, and Roman thought that it became a metaphor for the best qualities of the human mind. And in the Roman kitchen, salt was the foundation of the empire's most famous condiment, garum, the fermented fish sauce made through extensive salting that Romans used on virtually everything they ate, from breakfast to the grandest banquets. Rome fell, its legions disbanded, its roads cracked and were swallowed by centuries of neglect and overgrowth, its language fragmented into the Romance languages of modern Europe. Its laws survived, transformed in the legal systems of dozens of nations, and its salt, the white mineral that had powered the whole extraordinary enterprise, continued to shape the world long after the last emperor was gone. The salt roots of the ancient world became the trade routes of medieval Europe. The cities that controlled salt production in the post-Roman world, Venice most famously, whose salt monopoly in the Adriatic made it one of the wealthiest cities in human history, were following a playbook that Roman administrators had written 1,000 years earlier. Salt taxes remained among the most politically explosive forms of taxation well into the modern era. The French gabelle, the deeply hated salt tax, was one of the direct triggers of the French Revolution. Mahatma Gandhi's famous Salt March of 1930, in which he walked 240 miles to the sea to make salt in defiance of British colonial salt laws, was one of the pivotal moments of Indian independence. A mineral, a simple compound of sodium and chloride, shaping the fall of monarchies and the birth of nations thousands of years after Roman soldiers first received their salarium on the dusty roads of the ancient world. And every time you receive your salary, every single payday, you are carrying a word that was born in the salt flats of ancient Rome. History, it turns out, has a way of hiding in the most ordinary places. And there it is, the most ordinary thing on your dinner table, the thing you shake without thinking, buy without hesitation, and use without ever once wondering where it came from or what it cost. That tiny grain of salt on your fingertip carries 2,000 years of history. It built roads, it fed armies, it preserved civilizations, it paid soldiers, it toppled kings. And it gave you the word you use every time you talk about the money you work so hard to earn. History has a way of hiding in plain sight, in the words we speak and the minerals we sprinkle without a second thought. If this story made you see the ordinary world a little differently, please hit that like button and subscribe. It genuinely keeps these stories alive. And now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. What history subject are you most curious about? Something ancient, something forgotten, something hiding in plain sight just like salt. Write it down. Our next video might be your idea brought to life. Hit the notification bell so you never miss the next story. Until then, stay curious. History is everywhere, even on your dinner table.